Welcome to Hands-on FlexCel Programming. In this tutorial, you will learn how to create custom Delphi components for reporting and charting. And just as an introduction or short introduction to FlexCel, FlexCel is a class library that allows you to create Excel documents without Microsoft Excel actually being installed on your machine. FlexCel was initially developed for Delphi and the VCL, but in the meantime, it's also available as a DLL library, for example, so you can use it in any programming language from any IDE, but it is also available for FireMonkey for mobile and cross-platform development. The main idea behind this tutorial is that you do not only see FlexCel as a set of functions and procedures that you call, but that you can use FlexCel to create your own Delphi components, to create custom reports and custom charts for your own applications, and not only one application, but many of your applications. This video is part 4 of a video series about the Fitbit API. It's a hands-on series available for free on the TMS YouTube channel. Part 1 shows you how to access the Fitbit Web API cloud service using Delphi. In part 2, you learn how to wrap everything that you developed into a Delphi component that you can drop on the form. And then in part 3, you'll learn how to make the control even more comfortable, that it stores access keys so you don't have to provide username and password to log into the web API each time. All that is available as a playlist. The URL is given on this slide. And this part 4 tells you how to create reports and charts in this scenario. So the data is going to be the heartbeat pulse data that we retrieved from this service. You will be able to understand this video and make use of the FlexCel reporting and charting features without watching any of the previous videos. If you're not interested in that subject matter, you can focus on the FlexCel information. But maybe you'll see how you can incorporate FlexCel into existing use cases that you never thought about FlexCel before. So this might be an interesting video series to look into. The contents of this video are going to be structured as follows. First, I'm going to explain how to create reports with FlexCel. We're going to create a template with Microsoft Excel. We're going to use Microsoft Excel because it's easier to build the template in Excel itself. You could, of course, build everything from scratch using FlexCel commands, but I prefer the visual approach that you can actually see how your report is going to look like, because you can use Excel as your report designer. And then we're going to load the template into our executable of the application that we are going to develop. So with regards to deployment, there's absolutely no deployment necessary. Even the template file becomes part of your executable. And as an alternative to creating an Excel document, I'm going to explain how you can export the whole report to PDF. Everything, and this is the last item on this slide, will be wrapped in a component. So you will link this component to your actual component that you use to retrieve data from the web service. And by linking these components on the form, you will have a visual representation how the report gets generated based on the data from another control. So this will be a very rapid application development based tutorial. And as the second big step, we're going to create a chart with FlexCel. We're going to yet again add the chart as a part of the template. We're going to customize the chart in the template. I'm going to show you how you can link the information from the chart to the data that is generated in the report and what needs to be taken care of so it works when the report gets generated. There's a few caveats to look out for. They're described in the documentation pretty clearly, but seeing an example always works better for me personally. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can include this chart in your VCL applications or other applications as an image. So just from a perspective as a developer, you can use FlexCel in the background to create all your charts without actually the user noticing that you use any Excel or FlexCel technology in the background. You're just going to show the chart. So you can actually use FlexCel as your charting solution if you don't need interaction with the chart and just need to generate a chart in a certain format like PDF or as a vector. Then FlexCel might be the tool you have been looking for. Let's start by looking at the Delphi application that has been created in the process of this tutorial series. You have been given the information how to connect to the web service and how you can retrieve heartbeats, and the whole control has been described to you in great detail. We take this as granted, so we say we have this heartbeat information available and we can create a report based on that. And in the process of this tutorial, you will develop this control right here, or this component right here, the reporting component, which will link to the service component, this one right here, which is the service, the T-Fitbit service. And you link the report to this service, and then you can create a chart in a format that you can even specify here. It's either going to be PNG or SVG. And then you have properties at runtime where you can extract the chart and the report after generating it. So before we are going to look at the implementation, let me show everything how it's going to work in the end, because that's how I personally also learn best, if I see the outcome up front, so I know what the target of the demonstration is going to be. So I select the date, for example, February 16th. I connect to the web service, retrieve the heartbeat for the day, and then I can click report, and I can either select Microsoft Excel as file format, an XLSX file, or a PDF document. Let's stay with XLSX and name the file test. And that's it. We get our test file. I opened it in Excel right here. So here we have 1, 2, 3 columns with the time, the pulse or heartbeat, and I also calculate the time in seconds after midnight. And here on the right, you see the chart as it is generated in Excel. It's part of the Excel document. And you could give this Excel document to anybody on the world that has Excel, and that person would be able to make edits, have a look at all the information that's in the report. And of course, as an alternative, I'm going to show you how you can generate that in a PDF format. So when we click on Excel chart, you see that the image that we just saw inside of the Excel document has now been extracted as an image, and this chart view right here is a form that I added to the project. Going over to the form chart viewer, it's nothing but an T-image component, which then gets the reference to the image file. So that is what is being built in this video tutorial. The whole functionality is encapsulated in a different unit. I called it UFitbit reporting. And inside of that unit, first of all, I defined my component. So we need to derive from the class T component. I called it T-Fitbit reporting, and the create, destroy, constructor, destructor are a given. And then I need one method to create my report. I call it create heartbeats report. In this method, we will generate the Excel document, and we will generate the output and not store it in a file. Instead, we're going to store it in the last report field, which always points to the last report that we have created with the reporting component. And as a data type, I simply picked a memory stream, so the data of the report is being held in memory. T-memory stream also makes it very easy for us to store it as a file later on, because T-memory stream has a method save to file, and we can also easily copy it into other streams using the tstream functionality like copy from, for example. So tmemory stream makes it easy to transfer the data between different places in the application. And also, and this is something you can't know, but for the export to other formats, for example, to export the Excel document to a PDF document, FlexCel provides methods to easily load streams. So having the Excel document in a memory stream makes it easy later on to convert it to a PDF document. So these are this is the major method, create heartbeats report, and we have a function to get the last report. This will be needed if we want to query the report, what the last generated report is. And in order to be sure that we really have a report, I also generated a property has report, which returns if a report has been generated inside of the component or not. And furthermore, I created two properties, one to retrieve the report as an Excel document, and as you can see, read get last report. It is the same as get last report. So the standard format is going to be an Excel document. The internal report format inside of the controller or the component is always going to be Excel. So everything that I create later on with other formats will transfer this Excel data to the other format, and in this case PDF. So we also have a property report as PDF, which returns the Excel document as a PDF document. Furthermore, I have 2 or 3 published properties. The most important one is the service property, which links the reporting service to the other control that actually holds the data, because our heartbeat information is stored in the Fitbit service component. I'll show you that when we implement the actual creation of the report, then you can see how I can dig into that component. So we need to have the reference, and because I added it to the published section of the component, that will make it appear in the object inspector right here. So in the object inspector, everything you want to have or see in the object inspector, and once you give the developer or yourself, when you use the component yourself, the ability to customize it in the object inspector, you need to add it to the published section. There is some major focus on that on the second video, which shows you how to transfer an existing class into a component. I explained that in great detail. What is nice about the Delphi IDE, you can click the arrow here and then you can dig down into the, or drill down into the component that is actually referenced. And here you see all the properties of the service control. So you don't have to actually move over to the other component in order to look what properties are set. I think that's pretty neat. So we have not only the service, we also have the chart format, and you find that in the source right here. It's an enumerated type, and the chart format is of type tchart format, and I defined this to distinguish between PNG and SVG. SVG is a vector format, PNG is a pixel format, bitmap format that allows you to switch between vector format and bitmap format easily. The component will then generate the chart heartbeat picture accordingly to which format you have selected. And that is something you see here. You can actually retrieve the image for the chart using this property. So let's look at the implementation, how to create the report. First of all, the main class from FlexCel to create reports is FlexCel report. And this class allows you to create reporting. This class allows you to create reports with FlexCel. And it offers the ability to link a data set of any kind. A data set can be really a T data set or also just a simple list, a generic list with object instances, and then define a template that links or has placeholders for the data source elements. So for example, if you have a data table with fields A, B, C, and D, the template that you define for the report doesn't have to, but can list the fields A, B, C, D, and FlexCel will replace the basically the placeholders with the data from the report. And then you have certain mechanisms that will make it very easy to generate content for multiple records. And the template is going to tell FlexCel if, for example, each record gets a separate line or if each record gets a separate page. You can customize that very easily. And while we build the template, I'll explain that in detail. Before you can use the class tFlexCel report, I recommend adding all of these to your users class. The core are the core classes for FlexCel. Rendering is needed for charts because, as I already explained, there is no necessity for Excel to be installed on the system. So you can run your applications without Excel being installed. This is a major difference to other Excel libraries which use, for example, ODBC to create Excel documents. FlexCel really does not require Excel to be on the system or any drivers from Microsoft. It's a completely independent product. So everything that FlexCel includes does suffice to create Excel documents and also to render the charts and all the functionality that Excel provides. The report is self-explanatory. Those units provide the reporting functionality, and the XLS adapter is also needed. Before I get into detail with the template, let's focus on the functionality, how to create Let's focus on the functionality, how to create report step by step. First, you instantiate the FlexCel report instance. You have to specify true for the parameter because otherwise you won't be able to overwrite something that is already there. So if you, for example, already created or ran the report before using a certain file name, then and not specify true, you will get an exception because usually FlexCel is very careful not to overwrite anything. So you have to specify true. In this case, I think the parameter is also called a overwrite or something like that. So LReport is an instance of tFlexCel report, and then you link your data, and this is the key line of this method really. Because here we link the list of data items, which is service.heartbeat. So this is actually where we go into the Fitbit service and take the heartbeats, and I show you the data structure. The data structure is a list of heartbeat items, and we find those in here. So each heartbeat has time, seconds, and value. And if you remember the Excel template I showed you in the beginning, that might look very familiar. So these are the three values that are stored in there, and we have, because of the T heartbeat list, we have an object list of these items. So what happens here is we tell the report add a table of type T heartbeat. T heartbeat is this type right here, and we name it Q. This is just the letter that I usually use. You can use any other letter, or you can use customer or heartbeat or whatever you want to use in your template to direct to this record, so to speak. And here you basically tell LReport where the data is. So after specifying the placeholder in the template that you want to use, you specify the actual list of data or the data source. If you have a client data set, for example, which is service.heartbeats in this case. And then you also specify Dispose Mode. Sounds pretty academic. It actually means what happens to the items that are on this data structure when the report has been run. In this case, we don't want to make any changes. We don't want to free the T heartbeat items after running the report. This is very useful if you just get some data and you want to release it from memory after generating the report. Then you can basically say, hey, do dispose, and then all the items get released from memory automatically. That's not necessary here. So we leave the data structure as is because the service maintains all this, so we don't want to meddle with any of that. We just want to read the information for the report, and that's it. And the next line runs the report, and the first parameter is the template. I'm going to explain where that comes from and how we built it next. And then the target, and the target is fLastReport. fLastReport was the T memory stream, and in the beginning of the method I also clear that. So we make sure that the T memory stream is empty. And if you ask yourself, where do you reserve the memory? Where do you instantiate that? I instantiate that in the create constructor. This is where I say, hey, create a new T memory stream. And of course, in the destroy, I also free it. So we can be certain that fLastReport in this point is always valid, and we just clear it. And then we generate the new report with the parameter true, so we don't have to fear anything that we get an exception for overwriting something. And of course, for the later stage, at this point, we also need to update the chart in the control. The chart in the report is of course updated, but we have a property in the component, if you remember, that shows the image of a chart. So that's what we will be updating here. And I wrapped everything and try finally. So when the report gets instantiated, I free the report and I also free the template. So that is all you need to do to generate a report that you just saw on screen in Excel with all the numbers and the chart and everything. It's basically 1, 2, 3 lines. That's it. So how do you build the template? That is the only tiny little tricky part, I would say, where you need to spend some time to learn the syntax, how to link your data to the actual template. Let me open Excel, and then I have to find the template. It's right here, the BPM template, and you see that everything is empty, and even the chart is just showing a line that doesn't make much sense. The key is that you define in Excel everything the way you want to have it look when you finish your report. So these could be formatted with bold and italic. I could make change. For example, let's make this bold to have a change in there. And then also when you use a chart, always define 2. Not only 1 line, and that is very important. If you just generate a report that contains a certain amount of values, it is sufficient if you just supply 1 line for the row values. But if you want to generate a chart, it is very important that you have 1 line in there that actually tells Excel how your data logs. For example, if I hadn't put the 12 o'clock in here, Excel would get very confused how to display this value when generating the chart. That's not important when simply generating these values here and show them in a table, but for a chart it's very important. So that is the reason why I have this empty line in here. It is just because of the chart, so that Excel sees like, oh, this is a numeric value and this is also a numeric value. That is why it is there, because all these here, the so-called placeholders, they are all string values, technically speaking, even though when FlexCel replaces these placeholders with the actual values, we get different data types. In this case, it's all going to be numeric, time. And that is what's making this a little bit tricky, especially when building charts, because the things that you enter in the template are always going to be strings, but what ends up being replaced into these cells might be a completely different data type. The documentation for FlexCel has lots and lots of detailed information on that, because you can not only simply replace things like I do here, you can also use formula in here with conditions, and that is something that I even explain in the hands-on book number 1, where we generate a report where there is a condition in these placeholders. I just wanted to keep this video very simple so you get a feeling how you can create a report and how you tie the template to the report. I didn't want to get into any syntactic language details of the placeholder, how you can sculpture those to your needs. So keeping on track right now, this is the queue. You see the queue right here, and this is exactly this queue right here. So as soon as you have the queue.time.value.seconds, where does that come from? Of course, if you switch in Delphi over here, it's these properties right here. So if you use a T-data set, these are the field names. But for a class like T-heartbeat, these are the published properties. So right here, you have the time, the seconds, and the value. So this is how easy it is to link your data to the template. The only thing that is missing right now for us to understand is how does FlexCel know if, for example, you have 10 records in your data set or in your list, how does FlexCel know to insert them like this from up, down, and this, so that this is basically one record and that it has to go down for each record? Well, that is hidden in the name of a range. For example, this range right here denotes one record or one item in our list. So right there, you see it in newer versions of Excel. You get it in the left upper corner. You get the name for a range. A range is a selection of multiple cells. So right here, you see the name for this range, and it is underscore underscore Q underscore underscore. And the double underscore denotes that you want to go downwards for the next record. So you tell FlexCel that you want to go basically this row for one record, or this range for one record. And if the next item in the list is reached, you basically tell FlexCel to go here, and then here, and then here. That is what is implied by the double underscore. There is many other syntax in the documentation, how you can get something like a step, or how you can go like this is one record and this is the, so column-wise records. All that is possible using different name specifiers. How did I specify this name? Well, you either select this range where all these queues are, and it's also important to note that you have to specify the queue here. Otherwise, this hashtag queue.time is not being resolved correctly. So when you did this, you can use the name manager right here. And there you see that this range here is from A2 to C2. This is the range. And here you also see, I don't know how good the resolution of the video is, that it's 2 underscores and not 1. And then there's also this X in the end of the name, and that is key because that deletes this. Because what is happening is everything that is below your named range, so to speak, will move downwards while the report is generated. So if I left out this X, this line would still be in the report, but I don't need it. I just have this line in the report to generate the chart correctly. So for that reason, I add an X to the name, and that removes this line after the report has been generated. It's pretty neat. And at first I was like, why do you need that? Well, as soon as you work with charts, you kind of realize, okay, in order to do or to define a chart in Excel, you need to have like these two lines at least. And that's why the engineers at TMS needed an option to kick out one of the lines that is in the template, but should not stay in the actual generated report. That's the reason why that's there. So believe me or not, that's already it. That's all you need to do in order to tie your data to the report. So the essential steps are, you need to remember which alias you used. I used Q in this case. And then you have all the field names or all the property names of your data and can use them in this HTML-like syntax. You do a greater than, a smaller than sign, hashtag, alias, Q in this case. If I had selected not Q, but for example beat, then I would have written smaller than hashtag beat dot and then the property name. And then of course greater than sign to end it. That's kind of like HTML syntax if you want it like that. So you do that for all the properties, and for the record or for the item you need to select a range. You can also select multiple lines for one record. That's not a problem either. You select the name double underscore, then repeat the alias double underscore, and the X deletes this line, which is needed. And this is the next step, how to insert the chart. You select this range right here, and then Excel will suggest when you want to insert a chart. For example, this one here is, I selected the 2D line. It will automatically suggest that this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. It only works when you specify 2 lines. It won't work for 1. And then everything else is customization, like the size. I also set the properties that this chart does not move when the report is generated, that it is fixed and stays at the position it is. And the most important thing is giving it a name. So I give it, this is not the title. Heartbeat is the name of the chart. The chart is placed on the sheet in here, and the name is heartbeat. That is very important that you give it a name. And you can use, or you have to actually use, the placeholder. As you see right here, it says hashtag QTime for the description of the access. And of course you can use all the different parameters, format parameters that Excel has to offer. You can select different labels, tick marks, numbers. You can format it all as if it were a normal chart. The only thing you have to get used to is that you don't see actual numbers. You see these placeholders right here, but as soon as the report gets generated, these will become the actual values, as you just saw in the example. So that is also all I had to do in order to define the chart. So there is no magic involved to create a chart any different than you would normally do using Excel. And that is what makes FlexCel so powerful. You can use the functionality and technology that you're used to in order to create a chart. And you can also much easier communicate with your accounting department, with your finance department, with your HR department. You can communicate with them in a language that they understand. You can show them an Excel sheet with a template that you created, with charts that you created in Excel, which is a medium that they understand very, very easily because they work with it every day. And you then can take that and fill it with life using your Delphi application. So that is what makes FlexCel so powerful and useful as a means to have inside of your application. So going back over to the implementation, we of course have to add the template to the application, and a lot of people will use a file. You put the file, the template file, you store it, and that is something I should point out as well. I simply save it as a normal Excel file, name it bpm template.xlsx. I don't have to save it as a template file. I just save it as a standard Excel sheet. And let me save this, close. And where is the sheet? Because it's definitely not here anywhere. So how does the sheet become part of the application? In order to add the template to the executable or to your application or package in this case, because I added it to the component package. And in the second video, we learned how to add icons to components. And I also did this for the reporting component. I added, of course, the icons as explained in the second video, so our reporting component looks nice on the form. The template itself can be loaded using an RC data resource, just like the, I think, PNG images are loaded using the same kind of way. Yes, RC data. So it's not a bitmap resource, obviously. You simply use RC data, and I named it template BPM. That's the name I chose. So just like you specify a resource for an icon, you can specify your template, and you can literally load anything in here. You can load a CSV file for default data that you want to show in your application. You can embed a SQLite database if you wanted to. This is how to do it. Of course, newer Delphi versions offer the dialog right here where you can add resources and images. I have found that dialog to be finicky at times, that if you make changes, they don't get compiled properly. So I still prefer the way to create an RC file because it's more visual. You create an RC file and the compiler automatically creates the resource file, which is then added to the executable. How does it get added? Well, you have to include it into your application, because if we compile this, let's build this and look at what is being created in the Explorer, join Explorer, we should see something templates right here, templates.rc, but you also see templates.res. This is the compiled resource, and this resource contains the XL file. How is the XL file being found? Well, it is in the subdirectory of our component right here in XLS, and here is the template file, and it's 15 kilobytes. And if we go over to our component and look at template.res, it's right here, 15 kilobytes. So that's how it works. Alternatively, you can also, and this is actually the way I had it initially, you can also include this in your VCL application. That gives you the possibility to actually define a component and keep the template variable in your VCL application without making any modifications to the component. However, at that point, I would suggest you could actually define a property in your component with a file name where you can specify the template that you want to use instead of changing the resource of a component. That is, I think, much better practice than doing that. It is just something, when I was building this control or component, I was brainstorming, and this is what happens in the development process sometimes, that you realize that what you implemented doesn't make any sense anymore, but because you have been in a train of thought, you completely miss the obvious to implement another property for the Fitbit reporting service that would have a file name for the template, for example. But in this case, we want to provide the template as part of the component, and that's why we not only have to include this, we also have to include the template.res file. Otherwise, we're not able to use the resource. You have to tell, or you have to import the resource into the unit you want to use it in. And in this case, we want to use it in the Fitbit reporting component. And then going back to the create heartbeats report method that we looked at earlier, how to create the report. The missing part so far was how to load the template. And again, we can use streams for that. We define L template of type T resource stream. And T resource stream is so handy because you can literally load data from a resource by just using its name. So you create a T resource stream create. First parameter is the H instance. Just remember H instance. It is defined in your VCL application, so you don't need to do anything. It's just, I think it's even a constant in this case, but just specify H instance. And then the second parameter is the name of the resource. Well, we defined the name right here. It's template_bpm, and I defined a constant for that. So that's that. And then you have to specify the type of the resource, which is RC data, and in system.types in the unit there is a data or is a constant which is called RT_RC data, which tells the resource stream class that it's an RC data resource. That's it. And then you can set the position of the template to 0, and you can use the template with the run method as a stream, because run can take 2 streams, one for the template and one for the document to be created. And this way you don't even have to look at the template or use any specific FlexCel classes. Of course, you could load the template into FlexCel specific classes and make changes to the document even at that stage before you run the reporting. But let's keep it simple, and that's it. This is all you need to do in order to load the template. Don't forget, happened to me, don't forget to free the template, release it from memory, and that's it. This is how easy it is to link your data to a template, to include the template as a resource in your component. Build the component again. We don't need to install it again. We switch back to the client example, and we're already able to use it. So double click on report, and remember, just to, so we can say save service. The class has a property that tells us if the heartbeats have been retrieved. Service has heartbeats. That is what we use. And of course, in our VCL application that uses the component, we need somewhere to store the report. So the memory stream will take our report, and then we can really, as you can see here, because we dropped the component on the form and we named it reporting, we can then in our application use reporting. Let's have a look what it looks like in the IDE. We see here create heartbeats report. That's the method. We can get the last report. We can check if a report has been generated, and we have those 2 special formats. But what we've implemented so far is create heartbeats report, and get last report only returns the field fLast report. So these two are implemented so far. So calling this, and then we have if the report has been generated. So we can say if reporting has report. How do we implement has report? Well, it's pretty easy to implement because we have the stream with the report. We can simply say if that size is bigger than 0, then we know that there is a report inside of the memory stream. So that's all we need to do. And going back here, then we call a save dialog, which asks for the file name to be saved, and we defined a default extension, XLSX, and we also defined another file type. One is Microsoft Excel. You define the display name and the file mask, and the same for the PDF file format. And what I also always advise to do is on the options property, the override prompt, and of course that the path that is selected must exist. File obviously does not need to exist. That's it. And then for the title, save report. So that's the save dialog of type T file save dialog. And the execute method asks for a file name. And at this point, you have in the dialog save file name property either a PDF, an XLS, or, and this makes it a little bit tricky, a file that doesn't match the type. So we won't be able to generate a report for that. So far, don't throw an error message or anything. I wanted to focus on the important stuff. So we ask for the file name. We set our report to nil. And here is a try finally. I make sure that report gets free from memory. Is this dangerous? No, because even if nothing gets assigned to L report, you can call free on a nil value without getting into any issue. You know, I often see something like this: if assigned L report then, and then the L. That's not necessary, because L report free is actually defined as if L report assigned then free. So you don't need to do that. You can always call L report free, especially when you assign nil before that. And here, if the extension of the file is PDF, then we want to use the report as PDF and assign it to the memory stream. And here we assign report as XLS to L report. So far, we only have this implemented because we have not implemented the conversion to PDF, which is going to be the next topic that I'm going to show you. And finally, if the report is assigned, in this case, it means we either have XLSX or PDF. We move the memory stream to the first position and call, that's why I said the memory stream is so useful, save to file, and we use the file name that's been provided to us. And you saw that it works because that's how I started this video. Let's look at in detail at report as XLSX and report as PDF, just so that we're on the same page. So the report as XLSX is defined as get last report, and we all know that get last report returns the F last report. So there's no conversion happening there. But the report as PDF calls a different one. It calls get last report PDF, and that method indeed contains some conversion to the PDF format. So how does that work? Well, in this case, we really need to use FlexCel classes to load the document and assign it to the tFlexCel PDF export class. There's many more export classes. There's one for HTML, for example, and please refer to the documentation which other formats are available. You can also, I think, export even reports to image formats and stuff. FlexCel is very, very flexible with regards to that. So export PDF is my instance for the exporting class, and yet again the method here returns a memory stream which contains the PDF document. In this case, not an Excel document, it's going to be a PDF document. And if we have a report in self, yeah, because we're programming inside of the component, and the component has a method, has report, which tells us that we actually did generate a report, and we set the position inside of the last report to 0, and then we create a txls file, which is the class for Excel files. And again, at this stage, we do not need Excel. This has nothing to do with Excel. This is the Delphi wrapper class provided by FlexCel, which represents an Excel document. And this class can be assigned as in the first parameter of the create constructor of the PDF export class. And again, here is the override parameter. And just like I do it for the last report, I also have a field variable for the last report PDF. I clear that, and then I can simply call the L export PDF dot export and the target. Why don't I need to define the source? Because the source has been specified or transferred in the constructor. And now the last report PDF T memory stream has the PDF document inside. So the creation of the field is in the create constructor, as you can see right here, and the destruction in destroy. So that is all taken care of, and we should be able to also generate PDFs with the current implementation. Let's try that. Very important when developing components in a project group inside of the IDE. This VCL project, obviously, because all the DCU files haven't changed that have been compiled previously, that also encompass the component that we use, we have to rebuild. Compile doesn't make a difference, so we have to rebuild in order for our changes to get shown. So heartbeats, and we want to report. And let's create test.pdf. And here you see this is Adobe Acrobat, and we have our PDF with the reporting information. Of course, the chart is cut off because it's set to, of course the chart is cut off because it's shown on the same page. I could have specified to not show the chart in the PDF export, or I could have also made the chart on a different sheet inside of the Excel sheet. I just wanted to show that it's definitely possible to export the chart as well as the numerical values at the same time without using any special commands. So all of that is possible without any additional work. So the final step that I want to show you is if you don't want to use any Delphi specific charting controls, if you want to use Excel charts as images in PDF documents, you can also export the charts separately, like we're going to export it as a PNG or an SVG now. You can also do PDF there to get the full resolution charting. And the chart, just to see it from the VCL side, we're going to simply access the reporting.chart heartbeat property. That means the chart heartbeat property is of type tPicture, and it is always being updated according to the settings format-wise. Like it is either going to be a PNG or an SVG depending on what you have configured here. We're going to leave it on PNG, and then it's really completely integrated into the VCL class structure or object structure, however you want to put it. We just create another form, and this form has a tImage component, and when we show the form, we look if the image is assigned and then size the form just as big as the image is. And that gives us the ability to do charting based on the charts that are inside of the report instead of creating the chart with Delphi controls. Again, this might be the feature you have been looking for because you have so many charts defined in your company in Excel and you tried to rebuild them in your own application. That might not be necessary. You can simply use the chart definitions with the special colors or the special markings and everything that your Excel expert has defined, and you can directly use them in your VCL application. And this is also FireMonkey application or any other compatible application. If you use the DLL, there's really no limit to where you can use FlexCel, really. So how do we export or extract the chart from an Excel document? And that's really what it is. We have to load the chart from the Excel document that we generated using the report generator. So we remember we called the update chart method after generating the report. And this is really where the distinguishing part is between PNG and SVG. What we do is if we have the chart format set to PNG, we call the method getChart as PNG from Heartbeat report or getChart as SVG from Heartbeat report. And we assign it to the memory stream. And that memory stream is then loaded into the picture because fchart heartbeat is of type tPicture. So you can see right here, tPicture. And again, it's created when the class is initialized. So this is, again, the use case of streams is amazing. What you can facilitate using streams so much easier than working with actual data types or types. You can stay agnostic of any types. You can, as you can see here, you use the VCL functionality, being able to load a tPicture, which is either a PNG or an SVG. And the reason that the VCL in my case is able to load an SVG file is that I added the SVG specific classes that TMS software provides in their VCL framework, VCL UI pack to be more precise, or FNC UI pack, which tells tPicture, oh, SVG, I can use these methods to load these files. This is the tPicture implementation that existed in Delphi from its beginning, that tPicture is a class that is type agnostic, and you simply load from a stream or load from a file, and then the class decides which image component to use as long as you have the necessary libraries. The same is true for PNG. You have to have PNG image somewhere in the uses clause. And let's look at getChart as PNG. There you go. Here it is. We return a tMemory stream. And again, we need the txls file to load the report and have the representation of the document. What is very, very important as well is that FlexCel provides a different image type. It does not only provide an image type for tBitmap. No, it provides a class that is specifically written for all the image types and image specifics that are true for Excel. So this class can be found, or the description of this file can be found in the FlexCel documentation, and has to be used whenever you work with images inside of FlexCel. But of course, TMS provides methods to convert this type into Delphi tBitmap or tPicture, which you will see now. So we only want to do this if the report has been generated. And again, we use the XLS document load it, but this time we don't specify it in the constructor. No, we call its open method. So we call the open method of the txls file instance. And at this point, in that instance, we have the fully generated report with a chart and all the values. And this is the key line that is very, very important. We can use the render object method, which, as you can see, is also part of txls file, to extract an object from the Excel document. And we can do this by name, specifying -1. This is sadly, this is one of those things where you don't have a choice how a software provider implements something, and this is rooted deep in Excel functionality. I was told that you can either specify the item ID or index ID, it is called, I think, of the object inside of the Excel document. So everything inside of an Excel document has a unique ID of some sort. Or if you specify -1, you can go by name. And if you remember, we named the chart heartbeat. And to make things more complicated, Microsoft said, hey, if you access it externally, you have to add an @ in front of it. So the string actually is @heartbeat, even though the chart is just called heartbeat, but that's just how it works. It returns a UI image instance. And a UI image instance, as I just said, can be any image format that Excel supports. So if it has been returned, if that doesn't exist, nil is returned. So this is also robust if something goes wrong with the chart generation in this case. So only if we really have an L image, then we create yet another memory stream, the one that we want to return, and we save this image that we just received from Excel into that memory stream. And then we can also specify the data type txls image type.png. I don't know if code completion, no. Sadly, no. PNG, you have many other formats like bitmap, and of course, as you'll see, also EMF and other very specific Excel formats. So result position equals 1 is also added so that it can easily be loaded after leaving this method. Then the consumer of your class doesn't have to do the position equals 1. And then we free the image that has just been returned to us by Excel. And finally, we also free the XLS file instance. Here you also see we have an implementation of an exception when the image cannot be retrieved, cannot extract chart, incorrect report. Why do I say incorrect report? Well, if you use multiple templates and in that template heartbeat does not exist, you can even react to that. So that is the sense of that. And of course, if has report is false, you can also throw the exception no report found in memory. This is the way to show error messages in components. The IDE would even show that when you were using the component at runtime, if you were to provide a runtime implementation for all this. So that's all there is to do to convert it to PNG. And finally, SVG, the vector format, same construct. We need an XLS file, but this time we don't need a TUI image because XLS file has render object as SVG, and that has as its first parameter the target stream where the image should be exported to. And then again, the same construct -1 because we don't want to specify the index, we want to specify a name. Again, it's @heartbeat, not just heartbeat. And here you have the option to provide a title and a description and the encoding. SVG is an XML file at heart, as I joke about it. So T encoding UTF-8 makes the XML file that you generated UTF-8 encoded. And again, same trick as before, result position equals 0. And that's it. And that's how easy it is to provide two different file formats. And it's abstracted from in your component because the component just sees, if you go back to your form, click on the component, it just sees that it is a T picture. It doesn't see what kind of picture it is. And that's all using it. Once again, very easy. Image, picture, assign, reporting, chart beat, chart heartbeat. That's it. After all this, just briefly, where you can find more information on the internet, you can go to TMS software site flexcel.asp, and there you see I picked up the VCL and FireMonkey version of it. It's also available for .NET, and it's also available as a DLL for any compatible programming language. And there you find everything like trial downloads, documentation, and all the other features listed to check if something that you might not have seen in this tutorial and might be looking for instead, if it is in the feature set, you can look that all up online. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're just as fascinated about FlexCel as I am to have a rapid application development for reports and chart development in conjunction with designing everything in Microsoft Excel if wanted, and being able to link other products like the FNC Cloud Pack, as you've seen here, and even wrap everything nicely in a Delphi component that you can deploy between different development machines easily.